I know that Greg Rice made an hour-long or a little longer video on the town hall meeting we attended. I thought I'd make a shorter video on certain things that I observed at that meeting. So I'm just going to show some excerpts from that meeting and give some commentary, some of my thoughts on that.
Now, what foundational principles does the board use in its decision-making process regarding voting in favor of obscene material? For instance, board member Klein was kind enough to cite her reasons for making a motion and subsequently voting to keep a book in the high school library entitled A Stolen Life. And Faye did share her reasoning behind her decision. I don't believe I've seen anything else from any other board member, but Faye did share her reasoning, and if I could share it real quick, and then there's some follow-up questions with that. She says, I chose to keep this book in the library at East Noble High School as a resource for anyone who may, God forbid, be going through something similar. If the book is read in its entirety as intended, I believe it can be a valuable resource depicting true events. I read the entire book, spoke with parents, and prayed about it. I voted to expose minors to a book that, as intended, can teach them they can endure tough situations and survive. So that kind of opens up the door.
I just wanted to mention a few of the problems I had with Faye Klein's reasoning of why she voted to keep A Stolen Life in the public school library. She mentioned three things. She said that she read the whole book, that she spoke with parents, and that she prayed about it. Well, she read the whole book. Now, I've heard this argument before. The idea is that if you read the whole book, and there's so much good, there's so much benefit, that a little bit of bad is acceptable, because if you take it as a whole, overall, it will be beneficial for the student to read this. Well, the problem with that is that nobody, not even Faye Klein, lives by that standard. Nobody lives by that principle. It's always just the opposite. It's that a little bit of bad ruins the good. It's always a small amount of bad will ruin a whole lot of good. If you go to a Hollywood movie and there's one sexually explicit scene, the Motion Picture Association will give it an R rating because of one scene. Hollywood has a higher moral standard than East Noble School Corporation School Board. But this is played out in our entire life. It's always a little bit of bad ruins all the good. I remember one of us posted a few excerpts of a book, sexually explicit, but more mild than The Stolen Life. Facebook suspended the account. Facebook has a higher moral standard than our school board. Always a tiny bit of bad ruins all the good. If you were to write a 5,000-word essay and only plagiarize on a small portion, you would fail the class. Always. If you were to read excerpts of that book in your church, if you were a pastor or a priest, it would be scandalous. If you're a priest, you'd be defrocked. This would get in the news. Nobody lives by the standard that Faye Klein is putting forth of why that book is accessible. She certainly does not. If she were to go to the restaurant and she found a fly in her food, do you think she would go along with the waiter saying, well, 99% of the food is good. That fly is only in the 1%. Of course not. Nobody lives by that standard that, well, we should accept a little bit of bad because there's so much good. Nobody. If you cheat on your wife or husband one time, you have a great marriage, faithful, one time, you've ruined your whole marriage. Our entire life experience shows that bad ruins good. And as far as the Bible is concerned, this is a theme throughout the entire Bible. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. It's always a small bit of bad that ruins all the good. He who keeps the whole law and offends in one point is guilty of all. So this idea that if you read the whole book, except no one should believe that, no one should accept it. Faye Klein also said she spoke to the parents. What parents? What parents are in favor of this? I've been speaking years against this. Engage East Noble. All the parents that I know of have been speaking out against it, with the exception of very few. But why, even if a few parents do want this for the children, because all we're asking for is parental consent. Keep the books in the library, but require parental approval. Is all we are asking for is the middle ground, impartiality. But I've read the statistics. It's actually a very, very small percentage of the people who want that. It's like 3%. It's the vast majority on the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans, who do not want sexually explicit material in the literature in the schools. And Faye Klein also said that she has prayed about it. She prayed about it. That is not how it works. You don't pray and get the answer. If you pray and then you get the answer, who did you pray to? You're praying in your mind, and the answer came in your mind. You're praying to yourself. You gave yourself the answer. God didn't give you that answer. Did you seek godly counsel? Did you speak with the pastor? Now, I happened to speak to Faye Klein's pastor, and he told me he is against that. I spoke to the Bible teacher. He is against that. Well, I go to that church, and I hear what they preach, and they are against that. It's just unbelievable to say you pray. First of all, you don't pray about anything that is clearly wrong. You don't pray, God, should I steal that or should I not steal that? Anything that is clearly wrong or that the Bible is clearly against, you don't ever pray about those things. So just the idea that you're going to pray about this, it's wrong from the start. Now, Doug Jansen actually acted professionally at the meeting. He was the one person who I thought acted like a school board member should act. But if you listen to what he said, I also had problems with that.
I think that's only fair.
Let me take a stab at this one, Teresa. So I think what you're trying to ask here, Greg, is how do we come up? The initial question is how do we come up with our decisions?
I'm sorry, how what?
How we come up with our decisions, specifically.
One foundational principles, yes.
And what I
Okay.
do is,
Wow.
I was an elected position.
This troubles me
So I
because
think
at the same time,
constituents
Doug
and
Jansen
feedback
says
I get
that he
from
listens
Okay.
to his
I have my
constituents.
own moral compass. And I
And
use that to guide
he's
me.
also surrounded
I've gone
by
through the school
administrators
system,
who he values
so
their
I
opinion, but he
understand
doesn't always go
what the
along with
strengths
him.
of the school system are, what the
But that is
weaknesses of the school
exactly the
system are.
opposite
I enlist-
as
and
what
I
has
try
played
and
out since
guide
I've been
my
going to
judgment
school.
that way.
Because
I also have
he has
urban
never
surrounded by
listened
great
to his
administrators,
constituents.
and I
And he
value
has
their
always
opinions.
gone
I don't
along
always take their
with the
opinions, but I always
administrators,
value their
their
opinions, so I
opinion.
always look into my decisions based on that.
We have been speaking,
Specifically
me,
to
I've been
what
speaking
you're
there for
asking.
3 years now. And he has always, as far as I can, I don't know if there's ever an exception to this, voted in line with what the other administrators have been advocating for, which is a woke narrative, a woke agenda. And his constituents have consistently spoken against that narrative. I mean, if you go back, and I'm talking about shortly after I started speaking against the sexually explicit literature, the mask mandates came out, and parents were outraged by this. And there were many parents in there speaking out against this. But he went along with that pandemic narrative, and in a very, I would say, the way it was implemented was inconsistent. It was hypocritical. It was ridiculous. Most of the students, I would say, in the school did not follow the mask mandates. Half of the students in the hallways were not wearing their masks, or they were below their nose. No one was wearing an N95 or P100 or anything that anyone thought was, effective in preventing any virus. they were almost all wearing cloth masks, which even the scientific literature at the time, there was just a strong consensus that they were ineffective. They really didn't do anything. And, the kids are not wearing these masks at the bus stops. They put it on right before the bus gets there. They get on the bus. They take it off. They take it off when they get off the bus. They put it on as they walk into school. Then they sit at the desks in the school, which were, 3 feet apart. And they take the masks off all day. And then they walk through the halls without it. It was nonsense. Sending kids home because of contact tracing, healthy kids. I think my girls had to get sent home like 3 times. And then the board went along with the most ridiculous vaccine lottery. And I went to school with others, and we gave them the statistics. We were explaining the scientific literature at the time, that there had been 0 deaths of any healthy child from the ages of 0 to 19. So COVID was 0 risk to a healthy child. And yet they were pushing a vaccine lottery. That is completely reckless. So I think maybe he should have said something like, I should do some investigation. I should do some research. I should listen to the parents, because as it turns out, we, the parents, were right about everything the entire time. And the school board was wrong on absolutely everything, going along with that ridiculous narrative. And for Doug Jansen to say that he has a moral compass that he's following is exactly the opposite of what is being played out by his votes and the policies of the board. They're following any type of moral compass. They're actually abandoning morality. What they're advocating for is amorality. By giving children access or putting a curriculum sexual material, that is actually a complete disregard for morality. It's a lack or an ignoring of right and wrong. It's the opposite of a moral compass. It's having no moral compass at all. I don't think that you even have to be a Bible-believing Christian to know that this is unacceptable. The one thing that disturbs me is that no one mentions, none of the board members, and I've never heard them saying this, the solution to me is very simple. If they would just have as a priority, their criteria should be, what is in the best interest of the students? What is going to help the students achieve academic success, and what is going to keep the students safe? And if that were their priority, they would not be making the decisions that they're making. And I'm just going to finish, and the last thing, I'm just going to say a little bit about what Faye Klein has said. I'm leaving this to the end in case people have stopped watching so far, because I know Greg made a long video and touched on this, but I just want to say one final thought on this.
That's not why we set this up.
Okay, and to follow up with that, Teresa, I have made efforts to communicate with Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Klein as well.
No, you have not. Facebook is not an effort to communicate with me. You
I do
my
have
school
on
email.
Messenger where we've
Facebook Messenger is not an appropriate place to have these conversations.
Okay, I can see that you're really upset, Faye, and that's not my intention here. Okay, I'm just trying to communicate.
Okay. I don't know how inappropriate Facebook Messenger is for communicating. From the very beginning, when Faye started running for the school board, that was the standard way we would communicate. I'm just not sure there's a whole lot of difference between the different messaging apps and email, maybe the color of the icon. Facebook Messenger actually has end-to-end encryption, which I'm not sure that the high school email account has. So Facebook Messenger is a very secure way of communicating. Messenger actually has a feature where you could set up a separate, quickly accessible school account. So you would eliminate all distractions. I don't know what's wrong with that, but to tell Greg that he hasn't tried to communicate with her because he used the standard way of communicating isn't, sincere. My point is, when Faye began to run for the school board, she ran because she wanted to have an open line of communication. She wanted to be accessible to parents, to the public, to her constituents. I got involved in this because from the very start, before I ever went to school board, I tried to communicate to the school board through email. They never answered. My daughter wrote the school board through email. They never answered. And unfortunately, Faye has not fulfilled what she ran on. She has become the least accessible school board member, which is, unfortunate. Now, I think we need to replace the entire school board. They don't seem to fulfill their mandate, which is to keep students safe and seek what is best for the students to achieve academic success. They're following and they're voting for what I see as a clear agenda coming down from on high. The reason I say that it's an agenda is because I know how the school board's going to vote before they vote. And they are not being impartial, and they're not seeking what's best for the students. We need board members who won't go along with the woke agenda, who will focus on academics and keep the sexualization out of school and make sure that the girls are safe in their sports. So I'm asking you, please vote these people out. We need to get them out.